Hi, I'm Mike Reynolds, a senior reporter covering the media industry with S&P Global Market Intelligence, Tech, Media, and Telecom News Team. Welcome to MediaTalk, a podcast hosted by S&P Global, where the news and research staff explore issues in the ever-evolving media landscape. Today, we're talking about the changing way brands, whether news publishers, podcasters like yours truly, or even retailers, are connecting with consumers when all of us are constantly bombarded with information, at least some of which has been generated by artificial intelligence. Joining me today are two executives from Subtext, a platform that connects publishers, creators, and brands with audience through text messaging. Mike Donoghue is Subtext CEO and co-founder, while Sarah Schmidt is the company's VP of Marketing Communications. Welcome, Mike and Sarah.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Also in the MediaTalk house are two analysts from S&P Global Market Intelligence, 451 Research. Zach Ciampa covers consumer-focused marketing and advertising tech, while Raúl Castañón focuses on business communications and the digitization of the customer experience, among other things. How are you guys doing?
Good, Mike. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you for having us.
Mike, Sarah, let's start with you. Media fragmentation only continues to amplify. Companies or brands that have relied on search and social to funnel traffic to their websites are having a more difficult time. It's also tougher to find out who your audience is as well. How does Subtext help?
Yeah. So I think what we've seen over the past couple of years that you alluded to is social media can have an algorithm shift in an instant, making it impossible to reach your audience. They want you to use kind of their newest feature, making you change your entire strategy, and you still probably won't reach those followers. When we talk about organic search as well, we're also seeing that dramatic decrease in organic traffic because of the AI implementation. So I think actually Subtext is a perfect solution for both of those issues. So Subtext's mission has always been to empower newsrooms, musicians, brands, creators, podcasters to own their relationship with their audience by providing that direct line of bilateral communication over text messaging. And I think that one of the big and unique things about texting is there is that 98% open rate, and it can immediately kind of rectify that issue of you not being able to get your content or message in front of your audience. And 90% of people actually read your text within 3 minutes. And I think that's just completely unique to texting. And by creating an SMS channel, you get your most loyal audience members opting in to hear from you. And you own that direct line of communication completely. And what kind of sets Subtext apart in the SMS space is we make it possible to collect first-party data. And this data can help you inform your SMS strategy, your content strategy, or your marketing strategies. And ultimately, that data is for you to own. And that's kind of the biggest solution, I think, to these issues we're seeing from the Google shift and the social media shift. And I think a good example is we work with the Washington Post and Karen Tumulty, and she had a campaign where she kind of provided behind the scenes information from the campaign trail. And she sent photos, free article links, opinions, but she also would respond to her community and created these tumult texters, which she called them. And based on, yeah, how cool is that? And she would create content based off of what they asked. And that was what was really interesting. And I think that audience relationship is so unique to texting.
Mike, bilateralism, if you will, or two-way texting, that just provides better connections and insights overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the beautiful things about the medium, and Sarah kind of touched on this, is that this is the way that people are used to communicating with friends and family. It's very familiar. It's used across every single demographic. The open rates are exceedingly high. But one of the things that we like about the two-way messaging here is if you look at social media or email itself, like the likelihood that the vast majority of an audience would respond in, let's say, the comment section or have the degree of sociopathy necessary to reply to an email newsletter and expect a response is pretty limited. We think of the medium really as more informative as opposed to maybe commenting on social, which is certainly more performative at the end of the day.
I gotcha. Raúl, what are some of the ways that you are seeing companies change the way they interact with customers? Are their goals changing, or is it the same, ultimately to make a sale?
Yeah, I couldn't say that the goals have changed, but rather we are inching towards the ideal, which is what Mike was talking about in terms of that interaction with customers. So rather than a one-way conversation where you are firing off messages through different channels to your customers, it is now, thanks to technology, becoming more feasible for companies to have that interactive, rich exchange with our customers.
Zach, is this what's happening on the retail side? Are retailers using things like SMS versus push notifications and emails to get folks either in the door or to complete a transaction?
Yeah, it's really about meeting customers where they are right now more than ever because there are so many different channels and it's hard to prioritize each of them. Email largely is still the most preferred way for consumers and for brands to do contact, but we are seeing obviously a really big shift to getting access across channels. So whether that's push notifications or social, it's about signaling and doing your best to provide contextually relevant experiences. So if you have a QV app or there's the shopping signal when people are checking out, the goal is to make sure that you can close it, and that comes with being able to provide more real-time notifications, et cetera. So they're definitely embracing new experiences in order to try and close that gap.
I gotcha. Publishers often have a complicated relationship with AI. The New York Times, for example, is leading a group of publishers in a lawsuit against ChatGPT. On the other hand, other publishers, they're experimenting with AI writing copy. Sarah, how does Subtext think about AI?
Yeah, I think we believe there's an opportunity and a challenge, right? I think the opportunity is to use AI to understand consumer sentiment to help deliver personalized deals and content because we think consumers really want that. But I think where it can be a challenge and where I think people should not be using AI is as a main touch point for their consumers. Because I think, especially using something like Subtext, really the power of it is those authentic conversations. And when you turn it into a chat bot using an AI, you lose that and you lose that trust with your consumers.
Human touch still important.
Yeah, I think human touch is always going to be important, and I think that's what consumers want.
Mike, I've seen some articles where you've been somewhat critical of AI, or maybe more than that. What is your sense in terms of why humans still need to be here? As the technology is obviously in the mix, but the human touch is maybe what puts it over the top.
Critical, Mike? I mean, unbelievable.
Not you, not you. Okay, all right, all right.
No.
Trying to be nice.
No, you're right. And I think Sarah touched on this. There's a really big difference between using AI to solve individual problems, right, at scale, or provide experiences at scale that users find really beneficial versus, let's say, using AI to feign the voice or an interaction between you and, let's say, a journalist or a media company or a creator or an artist. We've found, and we're not alone in this, I mean, Meta recently shuttered their efforts on this front as well. But we find that people want to talk through computers, not to computers. The genie is out of the bottle. AI will continue probably to handle the sort of most basic kind of pink slime sort of content. So things that are written for SEO purposes, what time does the Super Bowl start, or something along those lines. But I think in the age of AI, like what becomes increasingly important is this sort of deep domain knowledge that a lot of journalists provide. Any of the AI platforms are going to be backwards facing, and I think it's going to be really difficult to replace not only the human touch, but the human understanding that maybe a deeply embedded journalist can provide.
Well, Mike just talked about the AI genies out of the bottle. Your three wishes, if you will.
So I think that mainly this would be in the form of getting that human touch at a scale, which is, I think, the main challenge that brands face in trying to engage with customers. So what we were describing previously in terms of having a rich interactive exchange with customers rather than just blasting off different messages through different channels, that makes a big difference in terms of the relationship with customers. So I could put probably at the top of the wish list that ability to scale human touch. And then along with that, the ability to reach customers where they are, as Zach mentioned. And then finally, making sure that you don't get filtered out, because there are just so many ways to reach customers, and customers are receiving so much information through an ever increasing number of channels. It's very easy for your message to get lost. Add to that the increase in robocalls and spam SMS, I think this is going to be a very interesting and challenging year for brands. So that's what I could be looking for.
Zach, on the retail front, as Raúl just mentioned, there's so many messages. How do you think about the role AI plays in consumer interactions? And some of us see a future where stores offer an AI assisted personal shopper. Is that in the realm here?
It's definitely in the realm. We're seeing two major areas for adoption. Obviously, the first is going to be with chatbots because the previous chatbot experience, I'm not sure anybody's ever really loved. It's been very clunky and hard to navigate, but there are benefits with using generative AI for chatbot purposes for a little bit more of a smarter interaction. But the one that we're particularly interested in is the case of product discovery right now, which is sort of like an AI personal assistant. But if you think about it like shopping on a website, right? Like to use someone like Lululemon, for example, and you're saying, oh, I'm a size this and I'm looking for pants that fit XYZ to this length. And the search results that you can often be so much deeper now because of that intelligence. And those are the little things that AI will really contribute to when it comes to making the retail experience a lot better. So ultimately, we'll see some sort of AI shopping assistant. Amazon's a great example with Rufus, where it can kind of guide you. But yeah, the product discovery in particular is going to be really interesting right now as the most immediate one, aside from chatbots. They're both good.
Let's switch gears a little bit to the political side. Me personally, I'm not registered with either of the two big parties, but both tried to convince me to donate money in the lead up to last year's election. The GOP even offered me a chance to attend the inauguration. I dared not respond for many reasons, but mostly because I just didn't want to be flooded with more messages. Mike and Sarah, can you share your views on the political message system overall? And Subtext was involved in 2024 to a large degree, a lot of good open rates.
Yeah, Mike. So I'm sure you loved, obviously, all the political messaging that you got this cycle. I know that's like a big highlight in everybody's day, every day.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, no. So to be clear, so in 2024, we didn't do work with either campaign. We have played a role with politicians using the platform or issue advocacy causes. But I think, I mean, to your question about how that went over the course of 24, I think it's no secret that SMS played a huge role, I think to great degree to the annoyance of a lot of the recipients of those messages. I think the sort of historical like P2P political text messaging ecosystem is broken today. It's more a matter of just sort of wearing people down until they acquiesce, right? Or they opt out of these messages or whatever it's going to be. I mean, Mike, you even described like not wanting to engage for fear of receiving more messages, which is like sort of the absolute opposite end of the experience spectrum that we go for. But I think after this election cycle, I mean, savvier political candidates, and we have some on the platform today, or even like issue advocacy organizations are going to start using the platform SMS messaging more effectively because this is a personal way to be able to communicate with people. And I think you'll see the smarter folks, the savvier folks, the more innovative folks lean into the bilateral nature of the medium to not only engender support, obviously, but to listen to the voices of their audience. I think there's a lot of value to be unlocked by communicating in a way that feels more human. I think a lot of us don't think of our political representation as entirely human most of the time. And I think this medium can engender that support. And I think we're doing a postmortem on like political messaging last year. I mean, most recipients were annoyed by the volume or the tone or the nature of the messaging. So I think we know that it's a really effective medium. It has to get better. It has to get more human and it has to be more genuine, which is what the team and I are focused on.
So Sarah, I mean, 25 is, we're not midterm, we're not presidential. Do people take a year off, so to speak, or is 25 a good time to kind of change the methodology, change the messaging ahead of the midterms in 26 and then to the next presidential cycle in 28?
Yeah, I think that I don't think people can take a break. I think, sadly, as much as I'm sure we'd all like that, I think it'll be the time to understand what worked, what didn't, and test out new ways to use SMS, to use texting for their campaigns. And I'm interested to see what the outcome is. Like Mike said, I actually volunteered to do texting during like the 2020 election.
Okay.
And it was very interesting experience now having the experience of subtext too. To me, it was quite clear why it wouldn't work. and not having that bilateral communication, actually being able to like listen to what people say and take that information and use it. I hope that's something that they're looking to implement moving forward, because I think it's a really easy and effective way to use SMS for campaigns.
Raúl, you mentioned before, again, the flood of messaging that comes your way. Is there a way for companies to avoid becoming quote unquote spam?
Definitely several ways, and the way that they are working is changing. First of all, I found your comment very interesting. We are seeing that the excess of messaging that consumers are receiving is actually now shaping consumer behavior. So brands need to be aware of this changing consumer behavior to make sure that they're not filtered out and that they can maintain those communication lines with their customers. There's many ways. Branded messaging, branded calling, I think that's going to increase in popularity so that your customers will have that guarantee that when they receive a message with your name, it is you on the other end. And then, of course, there's the way that you craft your messaging and your communication carefully so that you're not just flooding your customers' inboxes or SMS, but rather that you are building a conversation that is interactive and interesting for your customers.
I think you guys mentioned it before, Mike and Sarah, but forgive me. Subtext opt-in rates are really, really high, right? What's the ratio?
As far as opt-ins, 100% of the people that receive messages on our platform, they've opted in, they've raised their hand, they said like, hey, I'm interested in this topic, or I'm interested in hearing from this person. So the opt-in rate for us is 100% universally.
Okay.
And we have millions and millions of subscribers on the platform. What we're really proud about, though, are opt-out rate, meaning the percentage of people that maybe reply stop to a message or no longer want to receive the messages. There's a variety of ways to be able to do that. But on an annualized basis, our opt-out rate is actually less than like 1%.
Well, okay.
Which is pretty incredible given the other metrics and the high touch nature of the medium. And I think this is entirely anecdotal, but we handle opt-outs on the messaging and we help with customer service and that sort of thing. I can't tell you how many emails we get from subscribers that have to opt out for any variety of reasons, explicitly asking us not to tell the person whose campaign they're opting out from. So like, hey, I have to unsubscribe to Mike Reynolds, but like, please don't tell Mike, which I think really sort of underscores the value and the personal nature of this medium and the importance that people ascribe to these interactions.
So Sarah, you guys, as you mentioned before, you guys do a lot of work with journalists and musicians. These are people that appeal to a broad base of consumers. Why does this work so well?
I think because of the people that are running them, the way that they are creative in what they provide to their subscribers, that is why the opt-out rate is so low. Like they are providing really interesting and unique content. And it's not just here's a link to my merch or here's a link to my next concert. That's in there, but it's not the bulk of the conversation. And I think people are looking to create these individual direct relationships with these people that they love and get that content that you can't get elsewhere. And I think it's just such a unique angle when using Subtext to do that.
Zach, do people love their retailers that much? Are they working with some key influences, I should say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this entire ecosystem has shifted in the past couple of years, especially because of major platforms such as TikTok and Instagram. So when we're talking about the ability for brands to connect with their audiences on a deeper level, a lot of the way to do it is through creators that they know, be it journalists or musicians or everyday content creators, because they have audiences that are very, very often a really, really close match for their target markets. So it's just such a fascinating world and such a deeper way for these brands to connect with audiences in a way they couldn't before, because traditional advertising was seen as traditional advertising, and working with influencers for partnerships opens up a whole new realm.
All right. We're getting to the end here, everybody. Mike or Sarah, could you tell us Subtext has added a surveys feature? It's a means to gather more audience insight and feedback. How so? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, surveys for us were sort of the natural extension of the bilateral communication we have on the platform today. We kept hearing from clients like the engagement rate's amazing. Obviously, I'm hearing from so many of my customers or my readers that I wouldn't normally hear from. I need a way to be able to sort of take their pulse in real time, which is why we introduce surveys. So one of the things that we love about it is like, here you have this captive audience, you have people that are opening up these messages at 98% that want to be a part of this sort of participatory experience with the journalist or the creator, the brand or the musician that they really admire. And we wanted to release tech, obviously, that would not only listen to their voices, but help our hosts, the users of our platform, quantify those responses and be able to act on those responses in a really meaningful way. So it was really kind of a win-win across the board.
Last year, I read of 2024, 10 billion messages. Is that right? And that was up from how many in 23?
Yeah, that's right. So that would be up from roughly about 5 billion 2023.
Wow, okay, so
so
you
it
doubled.
would have doubled up. Yep.
Okay. So what's the goal for 2025? And you're expecting to break into new categories this year?
I think ultimately our goal this year is to kind of continue to empower our what we call like our bread and butter categories, newsrooms, musicians, event organizations, sports podcasts, while trying to expand into some new categories. We're really focused on strategic platform partnerships. We're seeing more and more demand for our medium. So we're kind of trying to get our platform in the hands of those who could benefit. You'll see us kind of announce some exciting partnerships in the next coming months. So we're really excited for what's come this year.
That concludes this episode of Media Talk. I just wanted to thank our guests, Sarah and Mike from Subtext, and Raúl and Zach from 451 Research for sharing some of their thoughts on direct messaging and its evolving and growing role amid today's media proliferation and fragmentation. Appreciate everybody.
Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Right.
everybody.
This is Mike Reynolds, and thanks to all of you for listening. We'll catch up soon on the next episode of Media Talk.